Hi, welcome to the Messy Dads, Merry Hearts podcast. We have two Christian dads here that are going through life and the messy situations, but have continued to put their faith and trust in God. This is Scott, not TJ.
And a friend of Travis.
Andy,
With
friend
the
of Travis.
pizzazz.
I about lost that.
Now that
But
we have the video, we can actually show them the pizzazz
I know
that you showed the day we came. Hello.
Only
We are open.
That's right.
Jazz hands and all.
Only you and maybe Sarah. I don't feel like she brings up as often, but probably the only two people. Your kids may have seen it, they probably won't remember.
My dad was there.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, my dad was there.
Your dad was. That's
my stepmom.
why he remains in Michigan. He doesn't. He
Doesn't
thought
come
about
down-
moving.
He doesn't come down here very often.
He's not that man. He's too much pizzazz for us. But well, good. Glad that you're here. Yes, hopefully the first thing you notice is that we are with visual, and this is not our first time with visual. If you've been with us, you know when we had Barb on, which was our first guest, to talk about the Ladies' Day. We had visual then. However, what is to also be noted, and I'm sure you're aware, we were at our church building at that time. We had our nice, perfectly white walls. For now, we of course have high hopes of those being painted later on, but talked about it being, and but now we've moved in with one of our members. He had an opportunity
We
for
didn't
us.
move in.
Well, you know,
I don't
we've
want-
actually got.
I wouldn't move in with him. A lot has happened
Yes,
since our last recordings.
it has.
We have a new state-of-the-art studio
That's right.
here.
Right here.
Also known as Jeremiah's Garage.
That
one. This is our first time in his garage.
Yes, today.
Because South Main Church of Christ kicked us out.
Lovingly. So we would bring it up a few times in our podcast that we were able to record. They have a nice studio and those things, and we're certainly it was great to go down there and host that, or that they hosted us, and that we got to record podcasts and those things. But as it came time that we were running out of episodes, needed to record some more, we reached out, and they had heard about how we got to live stream at our building, and that the audio, everything seemed to work out pretty well. Seemed like we had things going on our own here, and they've got things they're doing. They have their own podcast and that. So, they had said, which we'll talk about it maybe.
That's the working theory.
That's working theory.
I'm still thinking that they all caught an episode, and these boozos are just too
Only had to
goofy
listen
for
to
us,
one.
and here they are calling out superintendents of schools. Like, get them out of here.
That was the straw. That was the straw.
No, in all honesty, super appreciative of them because they let us get started.
Yes.
But they, it became probably to become a little bit of a scheduling issue on their end too.
Yes.
Jared, who did that, graciously told us, "Congrats on taking it to the next level."
He did. Yes.
So they put us in the garage. But to be fair, that episode with Barb did go very good because we have members at our church who, I'm going to give him some good feedback here, have many talents. And Jeremiah does a great job. And so we have a new producer.
That's it.
We're growing. We got our own producer and everything. But it did go off without a hitch. This hopefully frees us up and doesn't constrain time as much. And we're able to do these a little bit more freely as we go on. So grateful to them. There's no ill will with South Main. They think it was becoming a little bit of a thing, and they said, "Hey, you guys did it, and you did great." So fly from the nest, children, is what they said.
We learned all the lessons we could.
Yeah, fly from the nest
in our
and
12,
get out.
13 episodes, and we got kicked.
They
So
were like a Walmart greeter. Get your stuff and get out. So
that's let us hear, as Andy has said. That again, we are appreciative for them, appreciative for Jeremiah, his ability to do these things. If you've heard me at Somerset bring up a few times, talk about childhood and those things, what my dreams were growing up, is I did drama, and I wanted to be on Broadway, Names and Lights, and I still don't know if my name is in lights. However, I'm in the spotlight. Jeremiah has these lights for us, and so we look good for you. Now, I'll be honest with you. This is all natural. When I was in drama, I had to use makeup and those things in the bright light. And so I hope, just as natural as I am, natural beauty.
Is that our next step?
Is that our... Oh,
We got our studio. We got a producer central to us. Who are we going to hire to be makeup?
Well, I would go get some of my wife's makeup, but I'm sure the skin tone would match.
What?
I know, it is summer. I'm starting to tan, but I don't think so. I
could put on a good tan, go spend an hour down at the gym in the tanning bed, and come back and use Danielle's stuff. No, like, who would be our makeup artist? Cameron?
She likes makeup.
There you go. We're evolving. We're going to have to get here early next time for hair and makeup.
Yes.
Hair.
It is very important
and makeup.
To us. Yes. We want to now we have the opportunity to look good for you, and we want to do what we can. So
there's a reason we're going to flop now, because we have faces for radio, and here we are putting them on camera.
And voices for print.
And
voices for print.
I like that.
Absolutely.
I think we brought that up at some point. I talked about, I was going to do radio in college, but a few things was, one, when you read for the radio, you got to read about when storms happen in certain cities, and there are just some cities I couldn't pronounce, so that's a problem.
Like Bible names?
Like Bible names and towns. And then on top of that, when I go through the drive-thru or I make phone calls, people ask, "Oh, can I talk to your husband?" Or, "Thank you, ma'am." And so coming on radio, that probably isn't...
That's where you're supposed to go, "It's sir!"
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I made a mistake when I was calling Pizza Hut one time. I was placing an order, and at the end I did say, "Thank you, sir," and it was a woman. And
yeah.
she was upset. But,
well, have you ever been... Is Hannah a dirt drinker? By dirt, I mean coffee.
Coffee? Yeah.
Yeah. Does she go to Starbucks and pay extra money for her dirt?
Sometimes.
Okay,
but...
so I have to, there's the joke. The men have recordings of their wife's Starbucks order on their phone, and they just play it. I don't go unless Sarah's with me.
Yep.
So she has to yell across me, because I'm not saying all that, with her, non-dairy milk and whatever she has to have, right? No. And so we'll pull up, and they'll have my sweet wife's voice, and then you pull up, and this is the face that you see driving.
What up?
Yep. Yeah. I'm going to tell her to start to duck or get in the back seat just to really confuse them. Because deducting there is oh, it was her, right? You can do that. But if I have her get in the back seat and duck, and then, I'll just start talking like this.
There you go.
Oh, the things we do to amuse ourselves.
Yeah.
So what are we talking about today?
Yeah. Well, we, along with, for those that have consistently heard us, I can't say watch, you're now going to consistently watch us, hopefully, but listen to us, as Andy pointed out, and I thought about it on my way over here, I print out these notes, and I said, I don't have the opening, because when we went to New Lex, saved on their computer.
Yeah, they saved it right on the computer and everything.
Somehow, I think when we did do it with Barb, I did have it printed out somewhere, and for whatever reason, that didn't even cross my mind.
Yeah,
and
you butchered it, so.
That's it, but...
But you got the in God part, so
that's it.
So that's all that matters, is that they know that we're Christians, and we came with the pizzazz. So I think nailed it. Nailed it.
Christians with pizzazz. That could be
Christians
a
with pizzazz.
Yes. So, anyway,
it's our interview segment.
Hey, I like it
with Scott's Sports Corner.
We have so many things going on, and now we have the ability and opportunity. So
yeah, we're out here amongst the Christmas decorations and everything.
That's it. It's gonna get wild. So, just full transparency, as you can all see us in these things. Andy was talking to me about a week or two ago, maybe it was, that hey, time's coming. We're gonna need to start recording and those things, and so. Put a list of things together that I felt like things we hadn't talked about, things we could talk about, things that could be helpful, people struggle with, deal with, those things. And obviously, clearly, we're still very humorous people. But of, things that people deal with, and certainly when you think about Christians, you think about people coming to church, is grief or loss. And so...
Well, when we started this adventure, I said, let's make it like when I come to your office and we
Yes.
just sit in a chair. But the problem is we're toned down from what we talk about in there. So
Yeah.
Now we got film. Are we gonna open it up and like take the gloves off or?
That's it. Of for you to decide, we'll put that in a poll.
Fair
We'll
enough.
put that in
Fair enough. Yeah.
or in our comment section. I think you commented about.
I did
Barb.
comment on one.
So, of
we're growing.
we are.
So.
But as I said, talking about grief and loss, and normally when I put these show notes together, last time I tried to make it more where I had some questions and to direct those things towards you. You talked about before if I just have you jump in, I kind of gave you a look and left you hanging. So I don't go over with these things with Andy beforehand, and especially today, as he said, no notes. He just showed up, and it was wild west. So
this is going to be what, episode 13, 14?
14.
Yeah, we're professionals at this point.
At this point,
so.
we'll handle
no notes, nothing.
no notes. But we've got a lot of people in the world, and I'm sure if you are listening to this, no matter your age or those things, there's been perhaps a loss in your life, and that can be something of you had a pet and lost your pet, or of talking about losing family members. Now, talking about pets, I was unaware having lost a pet, but okay, I'll go tell 2 stories. So the first story is that when we lived in our trailer in Newburgh, supposedly I had a hamster named Barney, and I don't know this until my parents explained, but I guess hamsters don't always live all that long or do whatever, but I guess mine died a few times while I was at preschool or wherever, and so they're like, oh no, and like they went and replaced him, and I didn't know any better.
Yeah.
But I guess that after a certain point they couldn't keep replacing Barney, and so then he just eventually did die.
They couldn't replace him, so then they got Baby Bop.
So then, yeah.
Yes, I watched Barney as a child. There's a funny story about that.
Okay.
But it's not going to go with today's show topic. So
well,
maybe we'll get on to
next
it.
episode.
So if I can teach my grandma how to comment, she'll tell you all about my Barney lunchbox for one day in kindergarten.
One day. Yeah. I did. So I remember that and being told that, and then this sorta leads into of a loss. But so we can talk about loss of family. We'll get there. But when I lost my brother, my aunt decided hey, you need a dog, and I was really excited at the time because I'm like, yeah, I've seen the movies, and dogs are friendly, and you can play with them and do stuff. But then I was quickly introduced to the fact that, oh, you're going to have to be the one that takes care of the dog. And I'm like, that's not really a friend, because you're my friend, and I don't take care of you. But I was going to have to feed the dog, take the dog for walks, I had to clean the dog poop, all that stuff. So
Friend.
I was given responsibility for the loss I was suffering. And so... So
it's like one of them Tamagotchi pets. Well, like, let's date ourselves. Do you remember those Tamagotchi pets? Yeah, they would die. Like if you kept them alive for like 2 weeks, you were a miracle worker.
Yeah.
So,
but otherwise, yeah. So I had this dog when I was in 3rd grade. I got the dog, and sometime in high school, we had moved houses and stuff. But I was in English class, and my mom texted me that the dog had died, and I was not sad. It was okay. We can.
woo! There's a huge burden off my plate.
That's it. So
Here's this companion that was no companion of mine. That was a burden.
it was.
There was your first foray into fatherhood, right there.
Yeah.
Now I got to be careful saying that because I get. Sarah and I had these friends. I coached this young man. He ended up becoming an assistant coach of mine. Became like a little brother. Mm-hmm. And he had the same girlfriend from high school. And then we ended up becoming friends with them because at the time there was not a huge age gap, a little bit. When they got married, finally, we had both of our children, and we were at their. It was like they were big bowlers, bowling.
Yeah.
And so the night before their wedding, they had a rehearsal, but then they invited a bunch of people out to a bowling alley. They rented a room, you bowled, whatever. So we were there. We were getting ready to leave. We went up to them. I was like, let's go say goodbye to Ryan and Lindsay, and we'll see you tomorrow. And somehow we got talking about second children. Now, mind you, they're not married, and there's no children yet.
Okay.
Okay? So she asked the question, which is always a good question. If you would have had Jackson first,
Yep. I've heard this question. Yep.
would Wyatt exist? No. The answer was no.
Right, yeah.
like if number 2 was first, number 1 wouldn't exist.
Right. Yeah.
Fair. She responds by saying, yeah, if we would have had such and such first, we wouldn't have bought the second one. She's talking about her dogs. So we kindly smile and nod. And we nod and we let her go on with her story and we walk away. And when we get outside, Sarah looks at me and the first thing she says is, dogs aren't children. And she just shakes her head. And I was like, no, they are not.
Yes.
But we will let her have her moment. Because she is the one getting married tomorrow.
For she's the one getting married tomorrow.
So,
Yeah. Yeah, I don't...
while I say there was your first foray into fatherhood, that was not.
Yeah, well,
was just
that's something that I think I'd agree with you and Sarah's position now. Before I heard it, I didn't understand it. I'm like, yeah, because of our dog, when we had a dog together, that which I enjoyed our dog together. I did, and in fact, when he actually he escaped our house like 13 times. I went looking for this dog. Like I was.
You wanted him back.
I wanted that dog.
Yes.
So, I'll pick up his poo. So, anyways, that,
Just get your own yard, and then you can just run it over with the lawnmower. Fine.
well, that's a different topic. I'm about my own lawn, so.
We'll talk about lawn fertilization at another point.
But, when we had that dog and those things, that there were things that, okay, we had to, if we were going to go visit family, you can take the dog or this stuff, or if we were going to be gone for the day, we could only be gone for so long, and there's obviously an expense of having the dog and that stuff, so if I'd heard the statement that, dogs aren't kids and this stuff, like, well, but, granted, I went from one dog to 3 children, so,
Yeah. So now you know that they are, in fact, not children.
I think one would have taught me the lesson, but, as we pointed out earlier.
If only somebody would have warned you.
Well,
And
heed the warning. It doesn't matter, there's stop signs everywhere, but you were on the stop sign, you got to listen to it, so.
Right.
But all that to say.
All of that to say. Let's talk about your dead relatives.
Yes. Absolutely. As we.
Here on the Merry Hearts podcast, let's talk about your relatives dying.
Yes. Well. It is something that takes place.
I see your first one there, and that's just like a heart-wrenching story.
Yeah, you heard it.
We're going a completely other way with this episode.
Yes, but I think I told you on the phone or whatever when we got here of Andy and I have been classified as the haha people, the haha men.
Yeah, dance monkeys.
And those things. So, of that, and he's talked about that before for our podcast and those things. I'd bring the Bible, he'd bring the haha. And, but I think that's good. And, I did do a lesson at Somerset where I was up front with people. I said, hey, today we're going to talk about suicide, this stuff. And that's not going to be your typical lesson in these things. Yeah. And, I very respectfully did those things. And, but I think, with our podcast and those things again, I know my mom's at least listened to 2. I'm kind of worried because I don't think she listened to the White Lies one yet. And, but now that this is filmed, she might be even more intrigued to.
Well, your grandma's going to watch.
Oh, I know my grandma
She can see your face.
Yes, she will. And that's what we talked about several times.
That's probably what my grandma watching.
And, but both you and I go on vacation, and I'm going to see my mom very soon. So we'll find out in person.
We'll find out if
I get asked a question.
To the White Lies. Like I said in the White Lies, mine was not technically where I snuck downstairs and asked my grandparents to film the hockey game for me while I was in trouble.
Yeah,
I have
more disobedient than lying.
Since fessed up to that one.
There you go.
So I'm in no danger there.
Well, there you go. One of us is.
Godspeed, friend.
So.
I hope you come back from Florida next week.
That's it. You just watch the news. But anyways, as we said. So, Jim lost, and people, handle it different ways and these things. I do think, and again, we'll have some other podcasts talk about friendships and these, but being a preacher, being a minister for myself, which Andy's not, he has preached for us. But also, if his grandparents are listening, I want to confirm.
He has preached for us that he is not a
But
minister.
He's not the minister's not the preacher,
Yeah.
not a preacher, but of of that.
It's okay. They weren't good.
I think
I am comfortable enough for you to say those were the poops.
I'm comfortable for you as my cheerleader to tell me that was terrible.
You can cheer that, like, hey, progress was made. Like, maybe
Yes,
maybe one Indian tear, but
Maybe.
All right.
But so I know I've as a minister I've been to several funerals before. As a minister, I got to go to funerals, and I think there's a difference in that, and with people. My wife didn't go to a lot of funerals growing up, or she didn't lose a lot of people growing up, and so I think it can be harder for her to relate to people because she didn't have that experience or those things. Whereas with me having had those experiences in that, now I do think at a time there were several losses in my life, and so I don't know if it's that or there's so many things going on. Like I know, Hannah, I've talked about it when I do announcements. In announcements on Wednesday night, that's what I'm kind of in control of, charge of.
Yeah.
And when I do those announcements, it ranges from people telling me, hey, I got this job, hey, someone's graduated my family, to, hey, so-and-so's sick in the hospital, to so-and-so is on their deathbed. And so being in charge of announcements is hard. Mm-hmm. And hey, you shared some really great and exciting news, and I want to cheer and clap for you. And in the next moment to be, very somber, very, I'm sorry about what's going on with you or for the one you love. And so there is a point where I don't think I'm as emotional as some people would be, I'd almost even say I don't know an appropriate level. Yeah. But again, I think it allows for me to understand or know. There's talks about the different stages of grief, and those things, and so. But from my own experiences, Andy alluded to a little bit, but really for me, the big first one, besides the animals, was my brother. When I was 9, he was 8, just a year younger than me. And so I lost him. And I just recently, whether I told you or I was telling someone else, not only was it hard because of how close we were in age and all the time we spent together, we shared rooms, had a bunk bed, that good stuff. But I remember after the fact and being in the room, and we got rid of the bunk beds, we changed it, we tried to make it more my room rather than our room, but we still had our Power Rangers, and I like Power Rangers, and so my mom got them down for me. They were up high, I couldn't reach them, but she went and did whatever she was doing, and when she came back to check on me or whatever, like, I wasn't playing with them, but I was crying because, hey, I played these with my brother, and now I was by myself. So I remember that. Now, again, just because I'm bringing up Power Rangers, because I'm bringing up my brother, I do feel like I had to share with you. Now that we have visual, you can see what Andy and I look like, and to a degree, always look this way. So I need you to understand that, and I need you to understand that my brother did not look like me. And what I mean by that, 1, he had olive skin, and 2, what I mean by that, he was more of the athletic build. But for one Halloween, we decided to both be the Red Power Ranger. And so he looked like the Power Ranger, and I looked like the Power Ranger that sat on the couch. So it's a funny photo. It really is. I mean, I don't know, my parents did it as a joke. We obviously...
they were 100% laughing, whether it was meant to be or not.
I don't know.
That's funny.
So, at a very young age, dealing with that loss and those things, and the way I know that I personally coach, which people do in different ways and things, but I know for me was that I wrote about it. I wrote about that situation. I wrote about that day. I wrote about leading up to then when he got sick, of the things to come after. I remember my grandma would sometimes pick us up from school or this stuff and take us out. And so one time she picked me up, took me out to McDonald's, and we were talking about what we're gonna do in the future or something.
Yeah.
And I knew that my brother was good at baseball, wanted to play baseball, and I said, well, hey, he can't do it, I'll play baseball. And but she encouraged me in that, hey, hey, that's what he liked and those things, but you got to do what you like, you got to do your own things. And so and again, I'm a preacher, mister. I'm not real famous for baseball. What? But in fact, I did now play baseball after his passing. But again, now that ended because I moved up from the pitching league or the pitching machine league, which I don't even know if they even have anymore. But I got moved up from the pitching machine league up to where my friends were throwing the ball, and I kept getting hit. So I had a heart protector and everything, but I kept getting hit. And so I chose to not be in a sport where I got hit anymore. So, now I do also remember one friend, him and I think we made connection. He was up pitching, and I think he did throw me a ball and strike, but I do think I got a hit off of him. I think he did let me hit.
You got one. You're like that movie, The Benchwarmers.
Right here.
Where he like foul tips it in his glove, and he goes strike 3, and he goes, but I tipped it. And the catcher goes, but you're still out. Like,
there you go.
And I won't finish the rest of that. I mean, it's a funny part. But,
yeah.
So how long after, just a question.
Yep.
You started crying playing with your Power Rangers.
Yep.
How long after that whole was that? Was that like...
Well, I can tell you time frame. I can tell you the
Was it like a week later?
So I was in third grade, and we moved to that house when I was in 6th grade. So within 3 year time, I don't know.
Okay. Well, the reason I ask, not to jump in and steal your thunder. So you were 9.
Yep.
My first real loss, I was 10. Mm-hmm. It was the day after I turned 10. And it actually put me in a bad spot. But it's funny. There's a full circle moment later on where that actually strengthened my resolve in God and stuff. But my grandmother passed away when I was 10 years old. Mm-hmm. It was 1997. It was the very end of it because we had lost 2 great-grandparents that year. And then my grandma. So the family was having a bad time. I wasn't as close to my great-grandparents. I would see them on Christmas. I was little, they were very old, so there wasn't much of a, but my grandma, she had some blood disease, so basically she had leukemia, and she passed away. Now, she passed away the day after my birthday. My birthday is the day after Christmas. Okay. So this was the week. Christmas Eve, the family was together. We used to go to my great-aunt's house. This year, she was in hospice care, so we were at my grandparents' house. My dad announced to the family when we were all together that he had asked my stepmom, my to-be stepmom, to marry him, and she had said yes. And my grandmother was awake because I remember she was looking very happy. I mean, she was looking rough. She was looking like a lady who had been bedridden with cancer, so it was rough, but
also happy.
But she was happy. And then Christmas Day, I don't really remember much about Christmas that year. My birthday comes. She was in a coma. And then the next day, basically, we knew she was going because the whole family came over. Yeah. So she passed that day, and I remember being in the basement of their house with all my cousins playing like we normally did, and my aunt came down, and she goes, it's time, and she took us all upstairs. I don't remember feeling super sad. Like I was sad, but I remember at one point we were all just kind of standing around and everybody's crying. And I mean, I might have shed a tear or two. Yeah. But I'm just kind of staring at her. And I looked at my dad. I was like, "Is she dead?" I thought we were just kind of watching her body. But she. Yeah. And again, I heard later on that the reason they knew is she had opened her eyes from her coma, looked right at my grandpa and said, "I love you," and he said, "I love you back," and she closed her eyes, and then that was it. Yeah. I remember they had a study off of the living room where her bed was, and they wheeled her in there, and I just went in there and sat. I didn't cry or anything. I don't know why. I just wanted to sit in there. And my uncle goes, "Oh, the kids, we're going to McDonald's." And I'm like, "I'm not going to McDonald's. I want to stay here." Yeah. But my dad made me go to McDonald's.
That dad Steve film.
So we went to McDonald's, came back. I go back to go in the room. She's gone.
Yep.
And I was a little bit
Upset.
That was a little bit upset, but still kind of like I walked out and I'm kind of embarrassed because some people from church had come over, and so I smiled. Like I kind of smiled like, ha, that's silly, Andy. You know what I mean? Like
Me
I
and my
was a
Happy
little
Meal.
embarrassed. So now we go through a funeral. I remember like I was sad. I remember being misty. She had me and my cousin read Bible verses. I got Psalms 23. I read that at her funeral. Got through it fine.
Yeah.
So that was obviously Christmas time. My dad got married to my stepmom in October, so it was 10 months later. We're at this wedding. I'm standing in this wedding, and there comes a point in the ceremony where we're going through everything, and my dad and my stepmom, they walk down off the stage, they hug and kiss. My stepmom's parents give a hug, both of them, peck on the cheek. And my grandpa was also standing in the wedding, so he's up by me. And after they got done doing that, they walk across the aisle to where my grandma would be sitting, and they put a rose down.
Yeah.
And I lost it.
Yeah.
Like I just absolutely, like I almost had to sit down. Like I just could not stop crying. Like I couldn't. Like the rest of the time, and like the rest, like my dad, my stepmom are standing there. They're crying. I look up at my grandpa. He's crying. My grandpa, big burly man, never cried hardly. You know what I mean? They come back up, and everything goes on. But as this thing goes on, I am standing there.
Yeah. The wedding video.
And I'm just still crying. Like I could not stop, and that was when it hit me.
Yeah.
So that was kind of why I asked you, like, how long was that? Because I was very close to her. And even to this day, like, getting through that story right there was kind of rough. And I was 10. I'm 37 now.
Yeah.
I've been without her for almost 3 times as long as I had her. And it's still very hard to get through stories about her to this day. But it was 10 months later before I officially was just, I had, like, a good cry about it.
Yeah, there's a video. I wish I could tell you more. It's a Touched by an Angel episode. This is a movie.
Yeah.
And the kid, I think it could have been cancer. But anyways, he goes to meet, they have an opportunity to go see Celine Dion.
Okay.
I know that. And then, I know that she's got red hair. It's a Ryder, I think is her last name. But anyway, she's in there.
Winona Ryder?
Huh?
Was it Winona Ryder?
Maybe.
Okay, that's the only Ryder I know.
Okay, with red hair.
She does have red hair, I think.
And
right,
she's
Jeremiah?
Country or...
I think so.
Okay. So, anyways, but she
Uh-oh.
was
We're getting an adjustment here.
in...
Oh, it was just me.
Oh.
That camera decided I was the only one pretty enough to be on camera. So
That cannot be.
Uh-oh.
that's absolutely what that camera's thinking. It's like, I just want to look at that guy's
I think
face.
I think you talked enough that it monitors...
Yeah, probably.
Of,
This guy won't shut up. Just put the camera on him.
put the camera on him. But anyways, they, so there's 150 psalms, which we know as songs. But they, so in this, they talk about, she wrote the Psalm 151, the 151st Psalm, and this stuff. As long as I shall live, I'll testify to love and these things. And I had watched it before he passed and all that stuff, but afterwards, I couldn't watch that because then the boy dies. And I couldn't watch that without crying and those things. And but I also tell people, whenever I was given a writing project in high school, college, whatever, I didn't see myself as a writer. I still don't know if I'd call myself a writer. But if I was given the opportunity to write about anything, and I had to make it 5 pages, I'd willingly and enjoyed writing about my losses. So I don't think I got to speak at his funeral. I did. I know I was given the responsibility. They gave me a baseball. I went around, got people to sign it.
Okay.
I know some teachers showed up. This stuff. When my grandma passed, I got to speak at her funeral. I was now at 17.
Okay.
And, but a little bit to what you said. So the situation with my grandma was, this will go so well, because I've probably told you this story. But, So I made mention at the beginning of this podcast about my name and lights, Broadway and in drama. Let's start there. Let's make sure we go back to that point and understand that what I'm about to tell you all involves a play, and I played a character. All right, good. I'm glad we established this.
Yeah.
So, anyways, I did this, and again, so I told my grandma, hey, I want to honor my brother, play baseball. Hey, you need to do your own thing. Well,
Yeah.
I joined drama because, again, I've tried to be open and honest with people. I joined drama because my grandma would take me to those, and I saw that the main guy got to kiss a girl, and I said, that's what I want to do. I said, this is my ticket to kissing women. I'm going to be the star of a play in a musical. So that's why I joined. Forget the music, forget the dance.
Why you want to be a star? The chicks, man.
That's it. So I joined. But I mean, I started that, say, 5th grade. Well, early, when you're younger, all you can do is the musical. So I did the musical. Then as I got older, once I got to high school, there was a drama class you could take. You only had to take it once as a credit, but then you could just take it freely.
Keep going,
So I did. I took it every year but my senior year.
Yeah.
And then also you could start being involved in the fall play. So I did that as well. I was involved in the fall play. And the freshman year, I was just in the background. Sophomore year, I may have had a bit of a role. I'd have to go back and look at the playbill of those things. But my junior year, I finally get on stage. And we do a play called The Foreigner. Now, don't know if you know anything about The Foreigner.
Nope.
But it's supposed to happen in the backwoods some area. All right?
Okay.
Now, I've been acting since 5th grade. And with all of my talent,
Yes.
I get to be in a role as a junior.
Yeah.
I'm 2 years. 2 years, I'm out of here.
Ooh, yeah.
What big role do I get? I get to be on stage for all of 5 minutes in this 2-hour play.
How many lines?
No lines, no personal lines, and my face is covered. Now, why is my face covered? Because see, now maybe you remember what I told you about. So in The Foreigner, there get to be the KKK. And I was a member of the KKK for this play. So, that is what's going on. That's what I went to practices for, all that stuff. Very important to me to be in this play, because by golly, when I get to Broadway, we're going to laugh about it and think about, oh, ha, 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 ha. So,
I hope your children don't watch this podcast.
So anyways, that's going on. I've gone to practice, all this stuff, very important. Yeah. And my grandma had been in and out for kidney stones, all sorts of stuff. Well, here she was, again, being taken care of. That weekend, we had a show Thursday, Friday, Saturday, I think. And then there's a matinee on Sunday. And so I've already done the other shows, all this stuff. And Sunday, before I went to church and that stuff, I was told, hey, your grandma is in this condition, all that stuff. And I knew that, hey, she's been sick before, whatever, that I'm going to go to this play. And then afterwards, right, I'll have all the time in the world. The play will be over with and I can go. Mm-hmm. So while I'm at the plays, when I get messages, while I'm not on stage for my 5 minutes, I get messages from family and that stuff that, hey, once it's over with, you need to come straight home. Hey, blah, 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 blah.
When the clan meeting's over, come home.
Yep, when you're done with that, you need,
so bad.
You need to come home.
So bad. I'm sorry.
So, I tell you, this has everything today. So, anyways, I get all these messages, and that I do plays over with, I go home, and I think my parents are inside, or maybe they were, it was my mom's mom.
Yeah.
They may have been with her, something happened. But so then it was my other set of grandparents, my dad's parents, and I think it was my grandpa who came out to the car. I got home, I parked my car, everything came out to me, he said, yes, your grandma's passed.
Yeah.
And, I mean, you talk about that bawling, or just, that I think I knew it, or that stuff, or feared it, and when it was kind of finalized, but, I mean, so it was pretty upsetting and heartbreaking, this stuff. I went downstairs, we talked about my room was in a basement, went down there, I sat at my desk, and that's when I wrote about my grandma, and that, to other people who she may have been, but to me, what she meant, and the things that we did, and that I also, one of my regrets, because the other things I remember, is that, so this is getting into the fall time, okay? Yeah. So, which means people are starting to plan for Christmas.
Yeah.
And so, last thing I remember on the phone call was that my grandma had asked me, what do you want for Christmas?
Yeah.
And I talked about shoes. And so, that's what I remember. I remember that. I remember that the last movie we went and saw at the theater was Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, the first one.
Fair.
That this was so my grandparents were very different, but this grandma always took us outplace. They had money.
Yeah.
They took us. They took us to the
had
theater.
money.
This stuff.
Yeah.
And so it's very different. So this grandma took me to the theater. The other grandma, we went to Goodwill a lot. Okay, so which maybe some of that other, but yeah, very different. Okay?
Don't worry. I know the type.
So, but it did come down to the talent show either that year or the next year. I'll call what I did lip syncing, because it wasn't karaoke. It wasn't the song in the background with no vocal and my beautiful voice on top of it. It was that, hey, the person who's recorded this is paid wonderfully because they do a wonderful job, but I will sing along to and what it means.
Yeah.
And so I actually have up in my house, I have that picture got blown up to a poster size.
Yeah.
It was there on stage with me, and I've carried that with me. I think I took it to college with me. When we moved to Florida, I had it in our apartment, and it's now in our house in Ohio. But it's a picture of me, my grandma, and my two redheaded sisters. And
The redheads.
The redheads, yep.
What is it? It's Hopi, right?
Yes, Hopi's the youngest, that's it.
Hopi's the youngest.
And so, but, so I got to write about her in those things, but I continue to write. And I just know that was, but I'll say, and again, maybe this is to your point, and maybe, again, a reason to have a podcast and talk about not just the funny laughs, not just the stories and those things, but I think the examples from those instances when my mom lost a son and when my mom lost her mom, they continue to go to services. Because in that moment, you have choices. Yeah. You have choices to say, something awful and terrible has happened to me, I've lost someone, and that either I'm going to blame God and I'm no longer going to worship God, I'm no longer going to put my trust in God, or that even in the midst of this, because this happens to everyone, I'm going to trust God.
Yeah.
And so the fact that my parents continued and those things and encouraged me to go and that stuff, so again, actually the turning point we talked about the whole being in drama on Broadway, those things. Yeah. The turning point for me was when my grandma passed, and I sat there and I reflected and I said, listen, I was just on stage for 5 minutes with my face covered. Part of the KKK.
And a part I don't want to talk about.
And because of that, I missed my grandma. And again, I'm a very people-oriented person, those things. And what's more important, having done that, or had I been able to go spend time to see her one more time?
Yeah.
And so, is at that point that hey, I think I was kind of being selfish, and I'd like to be less selfish.
Yeah.
And things. So.
Well, not to cut you off.
Yep.
Are you good?
Yep.
You looked like you were going to keep going. I thought you were at an ending point. So if you need to keep going. All right. So the only way that could have been better is if you told me in your senior play you were a Confederate soldier. That would have been the best. Anywho, I talked about my grandma and her passing when I was 10 and how later on when you grow up and you learn things. So there was a couple things that happened. And I've lost others. I've lost friends. They were in war, my high school years. And after that, we were at war as a nation, which, again, won't get into politics, but, it was a pretty bad one. Lost friends there. Sarah and I had a friend who, at 26, tragically drowned. One of my best friends, his sister was in a car accident and dead at 36, something like that, so tragic. But my grandma was always the linchpin. And again, I talked about, I'm 37 now. I was 10 when she died, and it still hurts to this day. In the last couple of years, my wife and my father-in-law and me, she was my mother-in-law, so it's not as, but my mother-in-law passed away. And I talk a lot to my father-in-law, and I use my grandma a lot, is because she was 59 when she passed away. And I use her a lot as, kind of talking, and he goes, he's tired of feeling like this, when will it go away? And I said, it never goes away. It just gets familiar. So that's my first piece of deep advice in this. Yeah. But I talked about her her passing kind of strengthening my resolve further down the line. When she passed away, I was 10. My parents were divorced. My grandparents, all four of them, were a huge part of my upbringing. And I am super close to all of them. Even in those 10 years, 27 years later, you know, I am still devastated by my grandma passing. But what you find out later, I told you the story of her opening her eyes and telling my grandpa I love her. You know, that's got to be, to me, I didn't hear that when I was younger, but when you hear it, it's like, man, God let her wake up and let them talk one last time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's where I went. But that also because I mentioned she died the day after my birthday. She was in a coma on my birthday, but she was there. I did not know this, but she told everybody, I am staying alive through his birthday because I do not want him to associate his birthday with my death. Now, it was close enough that I kind of did. And I was mad. Like, I was mad at God, you know, and like we kept going to church. And I'm like, why? You know?
Yeah.
And then you said reactions to people dying. My cousin, that next summer, she came down and I stayed with my dad in the summer. So my grandpa watched me. And we got super close over the years. Me and my grandpa did because I was there.
Yeah.
But she decided she wanted to get baptized because that's what Amma, which is what we call my grandma, would want. And I kind of followed suit. And her mom said no because her mom wasn't there. My dad said no because I needed to study more. So, and then I was eventually baptized again later on when I was in my 20s before Sarah and I got married because I learned more about this. And I said, my grandma would not want me to just have a knee-jerk reaction to this and do that. She would want my relationship with God, not something to please her. Because as much as my dad studied with me and stuff like that, that was something that I wanted to do for her, and she wouldn't have liked that. And I realized that when I got older. Now it comes more into play again when you get older. I was 31 when my grandfather passed away. My other two grandparents are still living, thank goodness, still very close. But he passed away. He had gotten remarried, and that saved his life. We got another 21 years with my grandfather. And it would have been about 5 if he did not meet his other wife. And actually, she was very therapeutic for us because she loved to hear stories about my grandma. She would say, "How did your grandma put up with this?" And how, you know, and she always brought up that like, so my grandfather, like this is how you know this is how you know people are lonely. My grandfather met her in January. They were married in April.
Oh, there you go.
Or March. It might have even been March.
Yeah.
Sometime in that spring, like 2 or 3 months later, right? Because she had lost her husband. And she just always remembered, I'm like, are you sure? Are you sure you want to do this? My grandpa.
Yeah, I know my grandpa.
He's a good man. He's very, like I said, big, burly, stoic, kind of a pain, stubborn, you know, nothing like me. Which my dad was adopted, so he's the reason I talk about learned behavior. I try to emulate myself mostly a lot after him. Both of my grandfathers really, but he had a lot of good qualities. But, you know, I saw a lot of that faith. And so when my grandfather died, I wasn't sad. I mean, I was sad. But I remember, like I said, I just read a Bible verse at my grandmother's funeral. You know, I was 10, read it right off the page, move on. I wrote my grandfather. Basically, I just wrote, it should have been his eulogy because everybody that was there, like after, like when they were leaving, they basically said they should have just stopped after you were done reading.
Yeah.
So, because I just wrote and it was from the heart and I wrote about him. And one thing that my grandfather had was a terrific sense of humor, but because he was so kind of stoic and everything, you didn't see it unless he let you see it. So people were kind of hearing about parts of him that they had never witnessed before. But I was happy and I was sad because my step grandmother, for lack of a better term, her name was Peggy. She was still there. She had had a stroke and some other things, and he was taking care of her, and that was very hard on him. He looked like he was in pain. And, you know, he had been without my grandma, and I saw him in those few years more than a lot of people saw my grandfather and how bad off he was before he met Peggy. I truly believe he would have passed away much, much sooner if it hadn't been for her. But I remember one day we were up in Michigan and we went to visit and we were at his house. sat and talked with them. It was great. We went back to my other grandparents' house, and my grandma goes, "How was your Papa Bill?" And Sarah, of course, right away, "Oh, he was good. He was good." And I just kind of shook my head. And I was like, that wasn't my grandfather. Like, he was physically, he's fine, but that wasn't my grandfather.
Yeah.
You know? But I was able to get up there and read and get through that. My dad wouldn't, I did it because my dad wouldn't have been able to. And like I said, we talked about favoritism. I was definitely that grandfather's favorite grandkid.
Yeah.
And if any of there's some sore spots among the family, and I'll let them stew in their own madness, but there was a reason.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just because I'm awesome. It was because I spent the most time with him out of any of them.
Yeah.
And I did it because I really loved my grandfather.
Yeah.
And there's some opinions on why I did it. And I'll leave those right there too. But I was able to get up and read this and I compared him to Shrek. And everybody was laughing, you know, and I was like, and they were like, my dad was kind of looking, I was like, he had layers and you had to peel him back because you had to dig and get close to that man to see every part of him, his sense of humor. You know, my grandpa kind of came off as like a kind of simple almost sometimes, you know, didn't have real strong speech. He's super smart. And if you thought you got, I remember the line, and it was a shot at one of my aunts. If you thought you got one over on him, it's because he let you think that. So I was able to get through that and be happy because he was in heaven. And not only that, as much as I loved Peggy and she has passed on now too and everything, he was with my grandma again. And I was happy about that. And that's the difference between 10, where I was mad for a long time because I was 10 and not really strong in my faith. And then growing up and getting and digging into those things where, like, you know, I always, when somebody passes away, it's Ecclesiastes 7:1. I always have trouble saying that. You know, the day of death is better than the day of birth, is what it says, and I say that, and I believe that wholeheartedly. Me and you have talked about that. You know, people go on them, but you know, if the Lord decides at 37 it's time to call me home, I have faith that He will take care of my children and my wife, and hallelujah. You know,
Right. I think that's shaped, and maybe it has you too. It's shaped my understanding, and I feel like I've had to learn that lesson. I'd like to have thought after losing my brother at age 9. I mean, that's right. You're supposed to live a long life, and so I would have liked to have said I learned the lesson that you just don't know what tomorrow's going to look like. But I feel like, you know, my grandma had to pass, and even then, I still don't know. Or I think as time's gone on, those things, I think there can be instances where I do take tomorrow for granted.
Yep, absolutely.
Or I've been able to notice. So as a preacher, minister, those things, if I learn about someone's in the hospital and those things, I try to tell myself, I probably should go. Because if I say, oh, I'll do that tomorrow, I'll do that next week, there might not be a tomorrow, there might not be a next week.
I remember when my dad called me and he's like, he's not coming out of the hospital. He was having some like it was episodes. It was bad. It was a week after Jackson was born. I had a wife who was, you know, she had a C-section and she needed me. And I was talking to my dad, I was like, should I come? Should I not? And he's like, you do whatever you think is best. And I decided not to go and try to make it to the hospital before he passed because I just remember thinking, if I left her, he would be so mad at me. Yeah. You know? And then by the time that I thought that and the time he passed, I would have been somewhere. He was up in a hospital in Flint. I would have been somewhere between Toledo and Ann Arbor at that point, and I would have just missed it anyway.
You would, yes. And you know, more reason to be upset. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. No, we could talk more details and those things of, like I said, with an alien. Right. That's, I know, for my brother that, with his sickness and those things, they try to figure out, like, once he left the house, which I didn't even see him, the ambulance got there and also took him, but, so that night would have been the last time I saw him, but after that, and he's at the hospital, I didn't see him because I was 9, and they had a lot of tubes, they said, hooked up to him, and they said they didn't want me to see him like that.
Yeah. So
I didn't see him again until the funeral. Yeah. And so, again, now, being a minister in those things, and being in the hospitals and all that stuff, I've seen people, and this, that, the other. And I'm not saying that was wrong, but then when my brother's going to be transported to a different hospital and those things, he's going to be by med flight, all that stuff. There were issues. They tried to make an emergency landing to get it taken care of at the nearest hospital. And so I was being taken care of by other people, but my parents who were on the road, they got the phone call, hey, he didn't make it. And so, yeah, they had to pull off the side of the road and
Yeah.
be upset. You know,
Yeah. It's
here
rough.
they were trying
It's
to go.
absolutely rough. Yeah.
And, but like I said, I think for me, I mean, to talk about where we're at today and those things, how my parents decided at that point, how they decided after my grandma, how they, and I mean, even like I shared with you, is a turning point when my grandma passed for me to go from, hey, I'm going to go do this thing that really is self-seeking and those things to, I, I know that I have been blessed and I want to bless other people. So I know that was a turning point for me. And there, again, you repeated it, but there's choices and there's of how are you going to respond? How are you going to react in this choice? There's of will this thing cause you to go further away from God or closer? And I think you and I, because the situations are realist, that something I am positive about. You're going to die at some point.
We've talked about this many times.
That everyone that I read about in the Bible has died. Every one of them.
Every one of them.
Every last one of them.
Even Jesus.
Even Jesus who's risen. Have died.
Yep.
Every last one of them.
Only one of them
And
conquered
so,
it. Yeah.
now they lived at different ages and all that stuff, but they all died.
Yeah.
That's something that has been confident. And so, but we see it as a personal attack when my family member dies, when my friend dies. Well, why? Well, good people shouldn't die. I'd love for good people not to die.
Yeah.
I'd love for my family and relatives, but we live, you said, we've had this conversation. We live in a world that's not perfect. We live in what isn't finality. And so we're going,
Yeah. And kind of my final point, because I know we're running
I'm sure.
longer than normal, but I think this is a good topic to cover. It's a good story here about you with your brother and stuff. But, I think as when you're 9 or when you're 10, you got to expect a kid to be mad and not understand why that's happening. I urge parents who have young children like that lose a grandparent that they're close to, or even a sibling, keep that in mind and do what you can to nurture that child and try to help them but they're not going to get it, but just stay on it.
Yeah.
It was luckily for me, I had a good solid foundation in the faith, and that was able to kind of bring me back from some bad places off of that. And I mean, it's pretty simple for those of us in Christ. Ecclesiastes 7:1. The day of death is better than the day of birth.
Yep.
The world remembers Jesus' birth, but every week we remember his sacrifice and his death because that's the victory, right? So that's important when you're suffering grief. It doesn't make it hurt any less. My wife is still very much grieving. I'm still grieving over my grandmother.
Yeah.
Almost 30 years later.
Yeah.
Again, it's more familiar, and I'm growing up, but I've never lost her, and I never will. And so I think that's important to try to help a child dealing with something like that. To kind of remember, like you'll never lose that, but it's a victory. This isn't, and it's hard to comprehend. So I think that's good for us good in our faith.
Well, so
it hurts so much. So, and that's, in the words of Forrest Gump, that's all I got to say about that.
well then, so would you like me to? And like you said, of whether we did go longer, those things, I think that's good and open and honest. And I think it's of the mixture, right? That's whenever we do this, we want there to be comedy. We want there to be stories that we share, but we also try to share the Bible. And I think today we got to share our laughter and those things, but we also got to share some of those things on our hearts. The hurt and pain. But is it okay with you if I share? Because I think this goes back to what you brought up earlier. If it's okay if I share, end on a haha.
And on a haha. I mean, this episode has had. I mean, we found out you attended some Klan meetings as a teenager.
Well, so let's go back to that, because this is how we're gonna wrap it up. Okay. So you said the only thing funnier would be as if the next year, or whatever.
Oh my goodness! Were you a Confederate soldier at some point?
So listen. So in the fall of my my junior year, in the fall, I was a member of the KKK, right? In that play.
If you say Nazi or Confederate, I'm gonna lose my mind.
No, better. So come the spring, what musical do? We choose Jesus Christ Superstar. and I'm a disciple of Jesus.
You're Judas, aren't you?
So, I go from the fall to being a member of the KKK to the spring. Now I'm a follower of Christ.
To being Judas.
And, yes, so.
You were Judas.
I was
Confirm.
No.
Okay.
No, again, no.
Oh, okay.
No, there's a senior, this stuff.
You were either, I was going to say you were either Judas or you were Peter.
Now, I do think I filled in for Judas one day. He was gone, and I had known the part, and so I filled it in. with
Nice,
him. That
nice.
or Jesus. Jesus may be
There
gone
you go.
one day.
There's a good laugh to put a bow tie on our childhood traumas.
There you go. When you saw that or said that, I thought, that's funny that happened in that same year. Those two plays couldn't have any better plans.
Right.
So
Awesome.
But, well, again, we are glad that you not only gave us a listen, but also hopefully gave us a view today. And so we're so glad that you tuned into Messy Dads, Merry Hearts. We hope that you'll give us a view next time. This is Scott.
And this is Andy. See ya.